Hello there, my dear film fanatics. Welcome back to another episode of Tim and Tom's Film Nights, where Thomas and I are ready to bring some cinematic delight to your Monday evening. Now, before we dive into our discussion about tonight's film choice, let me first express my eternal gratitude for the thousands upon thousands of viewers who continue to support us on YouTube, or should I say, YouTubers. Oh, haha, a little bit of digital humor there, folks, now, Thomas. We've decided to take a trip back in time to the tumultuous days of World War II for tonight's review. We'll be discussing one of the most iconic war films of all time. No, not Saving Private Ryan. Though that was a good film, too.
But The Dirty Dozen.
Have you ever seen it, dear chap?
Oh, Timothy, my old friend, how I love these little cinematic adventures we embark on together.
Yes.
I have indeed seen the classic 1967 war film, The Dirty Dozen, directed by Robert Aldrich. It stars a veritable who's who of Hollywood greats, including Lee Marvin as the hardened sergeant in charge of training and leading a ragtag group of criminal misfits played by an ensemble cast that includes names like Ernest Borgnine, Charles Bronson, Jim Brown, John Cassavetes, Richard J. Cole, George Kennedy, Ralph Meeker, Robert Ryan, Trini Lopez, Telly Savalas, Donald Sutherland, Clint Walker, and Robert Webber. Now, Timothy, what did you think of the film? Did it live up to its reputation as one of the greatest war films ever made? Or was it just a bunch of over-dramatic hullabaloo?
Well, Thomas, dear chap, I must say that The Dirty Dozen is indeed one of the finest war films I have ever had the privilege of witnessing. It's a gripping tale of redemption and camaraderie set against the backdrop of World War II. The story follows a group of 12 convicted criminals who are given a choice: face certain death in a concentration camp or volunteer for a suicidal mission behind enemy lines, as they train under the merciless yet somewhat reluctant guidance of Sergeant Major Marvin's character. The ragtag bunch of misfit criminals slowly transform into a tight-knit unit, all united by their shared goal of survival and the chance to redeem themselves in the eyes of their country. Now, while I personally found the film's depiction of violence somewhat overly gratuitous at times, it does serve as a stark reminder of the brutality of war itself. However, what truly sets The Dirty Dozen apart for me is its excellent ensemble cast, each bringing their own unique flair and charm to their respective characters. Whether it's the cold-blooded efficiency of Ernest Borgnine's character, the quiet brawn Jim Brown's character, or even the charmingly flirtatious antics of Trini Lopez's character, each member of The Dirty Dozen brings something valuable to the table. Thomas, my dear fellow, what were your thoughts on this cinematic masterpiece? Did you find it as engaging and compelling as I did? Or were you perhaps more taken with the stunning visuals and historical accuracy?
Well, Timothy, old chap, I must say that while I appreciate the film's attempt to portray the harsh reality of war, I found myself rather bored by the seemingly endless training sequences. Don't get me wrong. Lee Marvin and the rest of the cast do a commendable job of bringing their characters to life. But I just felt like there were too many unnecessary close-ups of sweat dripping off of muscular bodies, panting heavily after yet another grueling exercise. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not averse to a bit of eye candy on the big screen, but when it comes at the expense of a cohesive storyline and character development, well, let's just say that I was hoping for a bit more substance and less unaware-able action. But moving onward and upward, I did find myself quite fascinated by the film's production trivia. For instance, did you know that the iconic opening scene where the prisoners are being marched toward their execution was actually filmed at the abandoned Fort Ord in California? And as for the infamous battle sequence at the end of the film where the Dirty Dozen stormed the German compound, it was actually just a repurposed set from the 1966 film The Warlord. Now, I'm not one to nitpick about authenticity and all that jazz, but as an art aficionado myself, I do appreciate a good cinematic illusion, don't you agree? So, Timothy, my dear friend, What do you think of my insights into the making of The Dirty Dozen? Have I swayed your opinion at all regarding the film's artistic merits and historical accuracy? Or are you still firmly rooted in your love for violence, sweat, and bare chests?
Oh, dear Tom, you know how much I value your insightful commentary on all things cinematic. As an avid fan of film myself, I too appreciate the artistry that goes into creating a believable illusion on screen. While I must admit that there were moments during the training sequences where my attention did wander slightly, I can't deny that they were crucial in establishing the camaraderie and teamwork between the members of the Dirty Dozen. And as for the repurposing of set pieces and locations, well, yeah, it does indeed add a certain charm to the film's overall, cobbled together appearance. Now, moving on to the soundtrack of this cinematic masterpiece, I must say that the score by composer Jerry Goldsmith is simply outstanding. The hauntingly beautiful theme song, The Dirty Dozen, performed by Frank Sinatra himself, perfectly captures the essence of the film's dark and gritty atmosphere. Do you agree, Thomas?
Well, the theme song for The Dirty Dozen does indeed capture the film's gritty, war-torn atmosphere quite well. But let's not forget about the score composed by Jerry Goldsmith himself. The hauntingly beautiful main title theme perfectly sets the somber mood for the film, while the more action-packed cues, such as the raid on the train and the assault on the compound, do a fantastic job of ramping up the suspense and tension during the film's most intense moments. Now, while I personally prefer something a bit more, let's say, contemporary in terms of musical style, I must admit that Goldsmith's score is a masterpiece in its own right, adding another layer of depth and realism to an already powerful film. So, Timothy, old chap, what do you think? Did the soundtrack and score of The Dirty Dozen enhance your overall viewing experience? Or were you more caught up in, the sweaty, muscular bodies and bouncing breasts on screen?
Well, Thomas, as an avid fan of cinema myself, I must admit that the cast assembled for The Dirty Dozen is truly a veritable who's who of Hollywood greats. Each member of AM, this ensemble, brings their own unique charm and charisma to their respective characters, creating a diverse group of misfit criminals with compelling backstories and complex motivations. Now, let's start at the top, shall we? Firstly, there's Lee Marvin as Sergeant Major W. the Gruff, yet ultimately reluctantly caring leader of the pack. Marvin brings a sense of weariness and world weariness to the role, but beneath that rough exterior lies a beating heart of steel. His chemistry with his fellow cast members, particularly Ernest Borgnine as Lieutenant Cummings, is simply electrifying, even when they're bickering like two old coots arguing over the last piece of apple pie at a 4th of July picnic. Moving onward and upward, we have the charismatic Ernest Borgnine as Lieutenant. Cummings, the stoic but loyal second in command of the group. His calm demeanor belies a steely resolve that never wavers in the face of adversity, whether it be from his fellow soldiers or the Nazi forces they're fighting against. I particularly enjoyed the scenes between Borgnine and Marvin, where their subtle banter masks a deep respect and understanding that only two seasoned veterans like themselves could truly appreciate. Now, let us not forget about the other members of this illustrious ensemble cast. The ever-smiling and charming Trini Lopez as Joe McCoy the Quiet, but deadly John Cassavetes as Staff Sergeant Rip Murdoch, the brooding and enigmatic Charles Bronson as Sergeant Crazy E.D., Eddie Dealey, the towering presence of AM, Jim Brown as Sergeant Rip Reed, the debonair charm of Richard J. Eckel as Corporal Frenchies LaSalle. Last, but certainly not least, the suave and sophisticated Telly Savalas as Captain Machine Gun Malarkey. Each member of this talented troupe brings their best game to their respective roles, creating a rich tapestry of complex characters that you simply cannot help but root for. even when they're doing less than honorable things. So, Thomas, my dear chap, do you have any particular favorites among this star-studded cast? Any standout performances or moments that left a lasting impression on your cinematic soul?
Well, Timothy, as much as I'd love to delve into each and every member of the cast and their respective performances, we have, a rather, pressing matter at hand, don't we? We were discussing the influence that the Dirty Dozen had on subsequent films and TV shows, weren't we? Now, while it's true that this cinematic masterpiece paved the way for countless imitators over the years, there are a few standout examples that come to mind. One such example is the 1987 action classic Predator starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dutch Schaefer, a member of a special forces team sent into the jungle to rescue some missing soldiers. However, what they instead find themselves up against is a highly advanced alien, Huntrin with an impressive arsenal of weapons at its disposal. The film's director openly admitted his admiration for the Dirty Dozen, citing it as a major inspiration for the film's plot and, characters. Another notable example is the popular 1990s TV series Band of Brothers, which follows the adventures of a group of World War II soldiers known as E Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Pyrogineers, better known as the Band of Brothers. While the show doesn't directly copy the formula set forth by the Dirty Dozen, it does borrow heavily from its themes of camaraderie and brotherhood under fire. The series also features an ensemble cast that includes some familiar faces, such as and all delivering compelling performances that bring to life the sacrifices and triumphs of these brave soldiers. Finally, we can't talk about the legacy of the Dirty Dozen without mentioning its impact on video games. The 2014 action-adventure game developed by and published by is a prime example of how the formula used in the Dirty Dozen has been adapted for the modern gaming audience. Players take control of a group of who must work together to survive increasingly difficult missions, all while navigating the treacherous waters of war-torn Europe during World War II. The game features an impressive cast of talented voice actors, including E, and who bring life to their respective characters and help transport players into the gritty world of espionage and combat that the Dirty Dozen so masterfully portrayed on the silver screen. So there you have it, Timothy, my dear chap. A brief overview of some of the most notable films and TV shows that owe a debt of inspiration to the cinematic classic that is the Dirty Dozen. Now, tell me, have I piqued your interest in any particular examples? Or perhaps you'd like to share some hidden gems of cinema and television that you think deserve a bit more attention?
Well, Thomas, we've come to the end of our discussion about the Dirty Dozen, and I must say that while we didn't always agree on certain aspects of the film, it's clear that this cinematic masterpiece has left a lasting impression on both of them. As for my final thoughts, I stand by my rating of 8 out of 10 stars. While the film may have its flaws, it more than makes up for them with its compelling characters and engaging storyline. The ensemble cast brings depth to their respective roles, making you care about even the most despicable of criminals as they embark on their suicidal mission behind enemy lines. While it may not be a perfect film, The Dirty Dozen is undeniably an iconic example of the war genre and a testament to director Robert Aldrich's talent for crafting tense, action-packed films that resonate with audiences even decades later. So, Thomas, dear chap, what are your final thoughts on this cinematic classic? Do you think it deserves its place in film history, or is it simply another forgettable war movie?
Well, Timothy Old Bean, I must confess that while I still stand by my rating of 5 out of 10 stars for the Dirty Dozen, there's no denying the impact this film has had on the action war genre and Hollywood as a whole. Sure, it might not be a masterpiece in terms of storytelling or character development, but it does what it sets out to do: entertain audiences with its mix of violence, humor, and camaraderie between a motley crew of misfit criminals. As for its legacy, it's undeniable that films like Predator and TV shows like Band of Brothers owe a debt of, inspiration to the formula first pioneered by the Dirty Dozen. And who could forget the countless imitations and homages it has spawned in the video game world? So, while I won't go as far as calling it a masterpiece myself, I can't deny the cultural impact this film has had over the years. It's a bit like, eating a fast food burger. It might not be the best thing for you in terms of nutrition or taste, but sometimes you just want something that'll satisfy your craving for action and adventure. And in that regard, the Dirty Dozen delivers, flaws and all. So there you have it, folks. Be sure to comment, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and fellow film enthusiasts. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified of our next upload, where we'll be diving headfirst into another cinematic classic that's guaranteed to provoke passionate debate and spirited discussion between Timothy and myself. Until then, have a fantastic day, evening, night, and remember, just because something is artificial doesn't mean it can't feel real. Sometimes.